Good morning. For those of you joining for the first time, my name is Conor Battigan, the CEO of Sandyford Business District. Sandyford Business District is the largest business improvement district on the island of Ireland. We've four business parks, South County, Central Park, Sandyford and Stillorgan. There's 26,000 employees, 5,000 residents, 4,000 daily visitors, 1,000 companies, and it's nestled between the mountains and the sea. It's effectively a city within a city. It was great to see activity return to the district this week, and the district is looking glorious, bathed in the sunshine today. You can stay up to date on the latest government supports, COVID-19 updates, access previous webinar information, and much, much more on our website, sandyford.ie. This is the seventh webinar in our series of webinars, and the topics are driven by the stakeholders within the district. This webinar will last approximately 45 minutes, and please feel free to send through any questions that you may have, and we'll be dealing with the questions at the end of the webinar. Today's webinar is about online marketing with a focus on pandemic strategy. We'll be joined by Alan McGovern, CEO and owner of the award-winning izest Marketing, and Laura Nolan, Commercial Director of izest Marketing. I'm also delighted to be joined by Owen Laverty, Head of Enterprise and Economics in Down. Owen will join us towards the end of the webinar. So might as well get started. So first of all, good morning, Alan McGovern and Laura Nolan from izest Marketing. Alan, if I may ask you a question, I was just wondering what it's like to have an office based on the same road as the China Szechuan restaurant, the restaurant that was voted number 14 out of the top 50 Chinese restaurants in Europe.
Good morning, Conor, and good morning, everybody. It's certainly not the question I was expecting to be starting with, but I'm very privileged to be actually right behind the China Szechuan. Unfortunately, I can't go there at the moment, but probably important to note and to give them a shout out that they are doing takeaway for the first time at the moment, and you can order it online. So a shout out to them.
That's great. Thanks, Alan. I suppose, Alan and Laura, before we jump into the webinar topic, your business, izest Marketing, is currently living and breathing the pandemic. So can you just first of all give the listeners an insight into your business and also how you've been impacted by the pandemic?
Yeah, so I guess just I'll talk about our business a little bit at the start maybe of our presentation, but just to say how we've been impacted by the pandemic in general. We've been on a very steady growth path for the last number of years. We took in foreign investment about 2.5 years ago, and everything was going very smoothly. And then obviously come March, the pandemic hit, and we were very similar to a lot of other companies, and people may think that, a digital marketing company has been completely protected. That's not the case. We've seen our revenues drop by about 50%. However, what we are seeing is a lot more new business inquiries coming down the road. Now, it'll be some time before they convert to actual cash flow. And I guess that's what is king for everybody at the moment, is cash flow and trying to manage that through the pandemic. I am confident that our business is stable, and we were able to make very quick decisions very early on around cost cutting measures. We managed to keep all our staff, and when we went through that P&L in the second week in March and we're looking for things to cut, it was amazing what expenses we could cut out of it. So we're in good shape. We're obviously challenged, but we're getting on with it, and it's an exciting time for digital marketing. There's no doubt about that. So will I just scoot on straight on into our presentation? So just to give you a little bit of background about izest, we are a full service marketing agency across every element of the marketing mix. We develop websites. We develop marketing strategy, and we have a design department, we have an in-house website development department, we have an in-house branding department, and we have a full account management team across all elements of marketing and the digital marketing mix. I guess what has changed in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, the company's 11 years old this year, is that we have, along with all of these services, we've very much become a hybrid of a business consultancy business for small to medium sized businesses. So we find ourselves with some businesses kind of down at P&L or financial level or operational level to try and streamline it from a digital and technology point of view, to make sure that people are getting the return online that they should be getting. I don't really want to focus on us today. I think what we're here to talk about is the pandemic strategy or marketing strategy. So we can flip on a slide there, and who's done it well and what can we learn from them. Now, obviously, I'm very conscious that there's people on here that some will have been impacted very little, and some businesses will just have ground to a halt. So we're taking a very positive approach to this presentation, and it doesn't mean that we mean any disrespect and are not cognizant of the people who are maybe suffering a little bit more than others. But I can safely say that there's probably every business that is on this webinar has an opportunity to utilize digital marketing better than they have been before. So to give you just a quick presentation overview, having said that, it's not like, obviously the pandemic has had far-reaching implications for businesses across lots of different sectors. Everyone's experience has been different. Our experience was that our tourism and retail clients, 50% of our business would be on retained marketing services. And of that 50%, maybe 30% would be across retail and retail, fashion, beauty, and tourism. So those retainers were decimated. So we had to think strategically about how long-term we're going to replace them, because they may not come back very quickly. So that's my experience, and everyone's experience is different. So we'll talk about that. It's not all doom and gloom, and there is opportunity. Obviously, with any type of change, and people generally, us as a human race, generally aren't too fond of change. But with change comes, and particularly change as dramatic as we've all had over the last number of months, comes changing consumer behavior. So Laura, after this, will run through a few quick statistics around consumer behavior and what's changed and what's maybe more obvious than other things straight after me here. We're also going to run through our 6 key observations from COVID-19. We're going to give some examples since COVID-19 started as regards e-commerce and the marketing mix and digital marketing. And in some cases, we'll give very specific examples of businesses that will illustrate this point and have done really well by maybe pivoting and been flexible enough to pivot into a slightly different version of what they were doing already. And then finally, we'll reflect on what the new normal will look like and how it'll affect all our lives going forward. And also, more importantly, how will it affect how you have to communicate maybe with your teams and with your customers, because maybe the days of sitting in front of a customer are gone for quite a while, or going to a trade show might be gone for quite a while. And these will be replaced by other methods, and mostly it'll be technology or digital driven. So we need to be aware of them. So I am going to hand over to Laura now, our commercial director, and she is going to talk just through some changing behaviours around since COVID-19 started.
Thank you, Alan. Lovely to meet you all virtually, and thanks for having us, Sanford Business District. So this is just really a snapshot, and the intent behind this is to, I suppose, set the scene for the changes that have happened in buying behaviour and consumer behaviour over such a or I suppose scarily short period of time. So if we just move on to the next, so I suppose one of the key things that's happened is, and as it's I suppose it's indicative of any situation that occurs in society or economy, when things change dramatically, we change dramatically in terms of how we react to it. So if you'll remember, 2 or 3 years ago, we had that snowstorm and everybody bought all the bread that existed in the whole of Ireland, and that was the thing. And this time it was toilet paper, so depending on what we feel our threats are, we buy accordingly. So the essentials around COVID-19 were toilet paper, were disinfectant products and food. But then there was this new category of essentials that came about. And that's really important because the new essential businesses were the ones that really saw dramatic growth once they capitalized on the opportunities. So you had cosmetics and beauty, you had exercise equipment, but also in fashion, that kind of exercise clothing. You have creativity, particularly along the lines of kids products, you know, like we'll say people's feeds are filled with paint by numbers. And then there's also the cooking and baking side of things. So to move on to the next one, this is just an illustration of two of our particular clients who fit into that new essentials kind of bracket. So one of them is in the beauty space, and they have seen an increase of 627% in sales. So as Alan alluded to, this is not the experience of everybody. You know, certain people have seen drops in their sales, but this is just to indicate that COVID-19, while decimating certain industries, has created huge growth for some. One of the things, then the fashion client having an increase of 722% in sales. Now that's partly because of some innovative strategizing on their part. They would have had a retail element that was due to open, and they kind of pivoted to offer a new service offering that definitely impacted on those sales numbers. But also in terms of their returning customer rate, 522 and 722 respectively, that just shows a lot of trust in the brand. Their experience was positive. And when Alan talks about e-commerce in a few minutes, you'll see that that customer experience is vital. It's not just enough to have an e-commerce presence. Again, a picture paints 1,000 words. Around this time, usually we're all on holidays. It's wedding season, it's party season, but those are the ones that are in decline. You know, 670% growth in disposable gloves, bread machines, 370% growth in weights, fitness goods, toilet paper. So this is a visual representation of the reality that we're all in right now. So the next slide then is just another example of just some of the buyer behavior. You know, exercise, 85% of people have taken up exercise and 40% intend to keep it up. I think the important thing about this is, you know, this will align with the whole work-life balance. You know, people are now used to a certain lifestyle of being at home more often. Will that change when we are allowed back to work? Will they want to keep these up? Global online sales are up 63% in fashion. E-commerce order volume is up 50% compared to this time last year. And just, I suppose, bring it back to a bit of B2B, from a survey done by Visual Capitalist, they surveyed, I think it was about 1,000 B2B clients of theirs. And the key concern they have is that customers are going to be postponing purchasing decisions because it's still so uncertain. You know, we're into phase one, but if that does not go according to plan, we're right back to where we started again. And then lastly, this slide really, I suppose, from our perspective, is an absolute illustration of the situation that we are in. The airline industry, the heroes of the airline industry, who would have, you know, been top of all kind of worth assessments up until now, within less than 3 months, they have collectively, all 7 of the top airlines, been overcome in terms of worth by one business, and that is Zoom. So Zoom have gone from 10 million users in December to 300 million in April, and a global wealth of 48 billion, right? So that is right there on your screen, an example of that 180-degree shift that has been caused by COVID-19, how some businesses have thrived and some businesses have really struggled. So now we're just going to move on to the top 6 observations that we kind of pinpointed, and Alan's going to kick this one off with the importance of a strong online strategy.
Hi again, everyone. Now this obviously to some may seem a little basic, the importance of an online strategy, and to others it will be that, you know, it never worked for me before. So, but there is, and I've said it earlier on, there is no business on here that should now not put an online digital marketing online strategy at the top of their to-do list, because you are going to have to engage with customers and potential customers in a different way going forward. And when I'm talking about an online strategy, there's lots and lots of elements to it, which I'll go through in a second. But really what, in a nutshell, what I'm talking about is reaching and talking to relevant or potential consumers or customers, engaging those customers in some shape or form. And that for e-commerce, that's a listing of products and trying to encourage them to buy. For a solicitor, it's relevant information and then a call to action to get them to fill in a form or pick up the phone and make contact. And that's what we call converting these customers. So it can be broken down really into those three. If we just go back 1 second, I'll come back to conversion in a second. So when we're talking about the importance of an online strategy, it's everything from your overall marketing plan, your digital marketing plan. So what platforms are you going to communicate on? You're obviously going to have a website. Is your website up to scratch? Are you now going, we've seen from one of Laura's earlier slides that trust is now a big thing. Consumers will start going back to the brands they trust. There will be less risk taken online. So you have to make sure that your offering is up to date. Your email marketing, is that integrated into your website? Is somebody answering emails in a timely manner? I'll give you an example of LinkedIn. When they send out a B2B white paper, they are, and it's a walled experience. So you have to put in your email address to read it. So they will be on the phone to you, your email address and phone number. They'll be on the phone to you within 10 to 12 minutes because reaction is key. They notice that if they can get talking to people in the B2B space, they can sell that are consuming their content. They can sell one of their business packages a lot quicker than if they leave it an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or even a week. So you have to be on top of that. And is your SEO, is your search engine optimization up to scratch? It's a busy marketplace. Is your search engine marketing up to scratch? So are you advertising correctly on Google? Are you advertising at all on Google? I did a simple search for some professional services up in Sandyford last night, and it's wide open for online advertising in that region. So targeting certain areas. There's, looking for certain professional services in Sandyford, and there's practices coming up in the city centre. It doesn't suit me right now. I want to relate to somebody local. I live in Rathfarnham. That's where the focus for certain professional services could be. And then how are we communicating? Are we communicating in a trustful way? Are we refining the message now that we're not pure? And this can apply to a manufacturing services business, a fashion business, a car business. It's how are car companies going to communicate to their customers going forward? They have taken a step forward with online consultation or online sales processes through Zoom or through video conference, and that needs to become more permanent in a lot of our businesses to see how we can integrate it into our overall communication strategy. An example of somebody that we work with is iConnect. They're an Apple premium reseller. They're only one of two in Ireland, and they were predominantly retail driven, and we've been working with them on a website, on an e-commerce solution, on a digital marketing solution for the last number of years. Coincidentally, back in October, we started specifically working on search engine optimization and the user experience on their site. Even though their site looked perfect, you need to go in, we analyze where people were falling off their site, and then aligning that work with their Google Ads strategy and their social media content. So we're really cohesive push in the last 6 months. And given that they were one of the last retail outlets, or group of retail outlets to close, but all our marketing attention since they closed was directed online. A complete refocus, a complete pivot to every piece of activity and communication been focused on B2B and B2B sales, B2C sales through their website. And in fairness to them, they showed an enormous amount of flexibility to be able to pivot with us, both operationally and from a decision-making point of view. And they've seen growth since that pivot of 400% in online sales. So that's a perfect example of somebody who already had an online strategy. If you don't have a specific online strategy, now is the time to start. You need to prioritize it, and it's never too late. There is massive opportunity for every business. We're still in the infancy of e-commerce in Ireland and worldwide, really, although it's growing apace, to really make an impact with a very defined strategic approach. It cannot be haphazard, and that's my final point on that. Okay, conversion, right? So I could talk about conversion all day long. I could be here tomorrow because it's my area of kind of pure interest. So when I talk about conversion is either, number one, if you have an e-commerce site, is making a sale, I guess, is a conversion. If you have a non-e-commerce site, so your professional services or your manufacturing or your restaurant or a printer, then you still have conversions. A conversion is somebody reaching your website, reaching one of your social media channels, and receiving an email and picking up the phone, getting to your website and sending in a form. And there has been a 50% increase in online sales since COVID started. So logic would apply that there's also going to be dramatic increase in online inquiries around B2B services that are not e-commerce suitable. However, from some examples that I want to give about how people have worked with e-commerce through COVID, and what they've done well. So Laura mentioned a fashion brand earlier on. So they normally go into Kildare Village around this time of year in April. And there was a large amount of stock bought for Kildare Village. Kildare Village was obviously closed. The brand was left with thousands of pieces of stock that essentially it couldn't sell. So rather than just doing a sale online, what we did was we came up with the concept of an online pop-up shop. Now, in theory, and in practice, it was very different. It wasn't very different just to a regular e-commerce store, other than that the user experience was a little bit different. You went in through the doors of the store on the homepage, and you got in and you got the same value that you would have got in Kildare Village online. And that was just a really simple e-commerce solution to I guess, address a real stock problem that they had at the start of COVID. And it worked hugely. It was hugely successful. Another brand is a brand called Space Kids. It's in with one of our clients that we work with in the Middle East. They are a kids luxury brand online store that has been established over the last 3 weeks. So basically it sells every luxury kids brand from Chloe, Balenciaga, Gucci, any luxury brand you can mention. Our client has the retail license, so bricks and mortar license for the Middle East for all these brands. He does not, or they do not have an online license to sell. However, because of COVID-19, they've approached about 20 of these major, massive brands, some of the biggest brands in the world, and they've managed to get agreement to sell online throughout COVID. And I can't see that changing long term given the results they've had. So they're now selling the likes of Chloe, Balenciaga, Gucci. So we helped create a very basic, because it had to be done pretty much overnight, a very basic e-commerce store that is now turning over about 200 orders a day in the Middle East, just on pure luxury goods, and that previously they weren't allowed to sell online. So big companies are starting to be flexible, and that's, I guess, an opportunity for all small to medium-sized businesses, is to take advantage of the flexibility that comes with this and take the opportunity. One last example is so we work with a makeup brand called Sculpted. Now, beauty brands have held up throughout COVID, but the problem for Sculpted was that a large percentage of their sales were through the pharmacy network. And as we know, we go into pharmacies now, some you can't get past the door, others you're certainly not encouraged to browse makeup. So what we did was so she lost a percentage of revenue, but what we did was we were able to replace that revenue with a pure online academy. So teaching, so basically teaching online. So is there an element of your business that you can bring online and maybe charge a fee for it? And that's what we did there, and I'm more than made up for the difference in revenue. As I said, I can go on about conversion all day, and Laura's giving me eyes here, so I need to go on to the next slide.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take on the third point, which is pivot, pivot, pivot. So as we referenced earlier, some businesses have been more impacted than others in terms of, what has been seen as essential and non-essential. And really, any business that has been very negatively impacted by this has really had two decisions or two options. They either keep their head down, hope they can ride out the storm and that this will, pass quicker than, or as quickly as possible, or they can reassess their business offering, see what the market is looking for, and see if they can pivot their existing resources to take advantage of new markets and consumer demand. Like there's 3 excellent examples of this, like movement events and pop-up events. So they are an event management company, but they manage all elements of it. So from fit out to the actual running of them. And they were able to completely change their service offering to see there's a gap in the market. Everybody's working from home. A lot of people don't have desks. So they started using their internal resources to create working from home desks. They are now also, movement events are selling, you know, the plastic protective equipment for salons and for shops to be able to open. McGowan's Printers is another example, typically a B2B business. So they are a large scale printing company. They saw a gap in the market for one of the new essentials, which is kids, toys and entertainment. And they have now started making these paper castles that you can buy and kids can color in. And another really good example, I think the hospitality or the food sector in particular is one that we have seen some really, really innovative work from. And Azador is one of the examples that we've used here. I think people are missing that restaurant feel. You just, you know, you can't mimic it to as much as you would like in your own home. And Azador have tried to meet that challenge. So they are sending out their boxes with all of everything you'd need for your barbecue or your dinner, and even including cocktails. So they're trying to replicate that restaurant experience, and they've seen huge growth as a consequence of it. We're actually also working on our own pivot, so you could watch this space. But in terms of what you can do, you know, as Alan has said, like as a professional service, you may think that there is no place for you in that e-commerce or selling your services online. And that's where we would come in terms of an idea generation. How can we monetize the services that you would normally offer on a face-to-face basis? You know, the planet or the environment is changing. You know, businesses that typically relied on face-to-face meetings, networking and referrals will have to start looking at their digital presence and using that as a lead generation tool. So I think that that's kind of one of the key things. How can you pivot your service offering even after we start to return to kind of normal practices? So now next is number 4.
Okay, so I guess when we say get good at making decisions, I think it's really agility is the name of the game. And one of the standouts of the pandemic has been the use of the term fluid when talking about all things strategic. And no matter what size you are, whether you're the sole decision maker or you have a board or you have a senior management team, you need to be good at making rational, well thought out decisions fast. An example of that, which happened just prior to this conference call, was a call that happened yesterday with a big, I guess, safety supplies company, and they are bringing in a large amount of PPE for the corporate world. So for us all, when we go back to work, and not medical grade, so it's, you know, suitable for offices, they were going to add that to their regular store. And this is a big company where decisions take a long time. We've been working with them for years. They're a fantastic company. And we spoke about it yesterday. There was an email this morning and a follow-up email from the managing director to say, go ahead. So within 24 hours, they'd made a really big strategic decision to spend money on developing something. So splitting out the PPE into its own website, its own e-commerce strategy, with its own marketing strategy to target corporates. And that's going to make a real difference. But the fact of the matter is they have to get to the market quickly. So the decision was made very quickly. Not every decision is the right one. And when something doesn't work, in izest, we do lots of them and we simply brush ourselves down and move on. One thing we did do was, in 4 weeks of closing our office, we launched oneaday.ie. It's an initiative to help one business or one sole trader support another. And it involved the creation of a brand, a website, collaboration from a number of businesses in our network to support the launch. And there's now over 200 businesses on there giving up to an hour a day of free services to try and help other businesses. And about 20,000 euros worth of services per day being offered for free. So that's just one way, and that helps us from a reputation point of view. And it also, you know, it's a good thing to do.
I'm just going to jump in before
Laura's
we finish this
baby.
one. So yeah, oneaday is my baby. There are an absolute wealth of businesses on that. So just as a heads up, if anybody thinks that they'd like to get involved in that in terms of offering a oneaday, so it is a free service, and the idea is it's as no, as few barriers to entry as possible. So you just have to determine what resources you have and what you can avail of or what you can offer. Even if you don't want to offer a service, you can go onto that website, look at all the different collaborators that are offering services, and you can use any of them and as many of them as you wish. So just on that side note, we'll move on to the next, which is honesty is the best policy within reason. I think there's two sides to this. There's an internal and an external view. Communication is key. And I think that it extends across everything from being upfront with your customers to keeping your employees in the loop. So we had clients who, you know, were initially getting negative feedback for trying to promote their products online because people were saying it was insensitive. But ultimately, through that means of honest communication, you know, you're seeing the businesses that have always had really strong engagement and really strong trust with their followers are getting support from them, you know, and people are actually going above and beyond to try and help them. And again, in that one a day element as well, what we've really seen has been that collaborative approach, you know, to have 200 businesses and individuals signed up to a platform where they're offering free services on a daily basis is a really positive and I suppose an encouraging sign to see. In terms of staff, I suppose internally in izest, what we did when this all came about, as Alan said, we looked at the P&L and we strategized different scenarios, you know, worst case scenario, what if this happened, what if that happened, you know, what would we have to do in all of these different situations, and what would cause us to pull the trigger on that decision. And then we sat down with the team in izest and we basically explained to them, this is the situation we are in and this is the action that we would have to take in this scenario or that scenario. So we went through kind of the first and second of our list, and we stuck to what we agreed with to them, you know. So we had said this would be our first step, and even though we might have gone, maybe we could move to step 2, we were like, let's stick to what we said to them, you know, value them, try and change our own overheads and everything we can do internally so that we can keep the positions for the staff. And I think the businesses that do that, you know, communicate honestly, that respect their employees and their customers, and are honest with them about delivery times and so on, they're the ones that will be commended for it. And once they keep it up, I think it will have a long-term impact on their brand. There's a phrase known as a go-to brand, and it's what I suppose the intent is, that they're the brands that will survive long-term, and they are the ones that are giving value to their customers. They're not just about making a sale, they're about adding value and creating that relationship. So I think that's a really important thing to take from this.
Okay, I think we'll speed up a little bit because it might be running over. So,
yeah.
So if we flick on to the next slide, we're on it. So keep up the good work. Okay, so within 1 week, we were all going in on the M50, probably to Sandyford. And certainly from izest's point of view, we would have always, you know, had a preference for working collectively in the office. Longer term, we will definitely change that. And the one thing that concerns me is culture and how that would be affected long term. But I think with clever initiatives, we can maintain that, but we certainly won't have everybody coming into the office 5 days a week going forward. It's not profitable. It's not as profitable as we'd like it to be, or productive, as I guess is the word I'm looking for. And it's universally impacted us all. And I guess, where does digital fit into this? So how is this going to affect your business and your staff? And then even more importantly, how is the fact that more people are going to be working from home going to affect your clients? For example, as I mentioned earlier on, will trade shows ever happen again, you know, in the near future? So if you're somebody who relies on trade shows and they're not going to happen, it will be replaced by something else. So is your digital offering, or is your technical and digital offering up to scratch to be able to engage and sell your wares to a huge amount of people that would normally come to a trade show? So yeah, you need to keep up we all need to keep up the good work of working from home and creating an environment where we can all thrive in the future. And I think it will come. It'll take time, but keep your own staff and your clients front of mind. And we'll just have a quick chat about the new normal before we finish up.
Yeah. So yeah, like in light of, I suppose, social distancing being the number one, I think that is going to be mentally the most challenging one. You know, we're a very tactile nation. We're used to shaking hands when we meet people, and, you know, depending on the relationship you have, hugging them. And, you know, we like to sit beside each other and go through spreadsheets and I think the social distancing and the plans for that, for getting back to work, are probably going to be a challenge. And I think collectively, it will be one of the more interesting elements of the new normal, how we come to terms with that. And I think that aligns with the digital focus, this move onto digital. Everybody should have a platform. Everybody should, have your sales strategy, you have your digital strategy. It should be as important as every other element of your business. Because it is, you don't want something like this, like pandemic could happen again in 6 months' time. And you don't want to be left again in a position where you are weaker digitally than your competitors.
Yeah, like and even things like remote working and virtual meetings, and something I was thinking when Laura was talking about Zoom, it'll be really interesting to see if they step up to the mark now with their offering, because that does need to improve, and it needs lots of more assets and features to make it to warrant that market cap of 46 billion, was it? So 48. So like all of these companies that are doing well now will also have their challenges in the future to make sure they maintain trust with customers. So if you are one of those companies that are doing well, first of all, well done, but make sure you solidify that by building trust, because trust is going to be huge in the future.
And even on that virtual meeting, so the Financial Times would be one of the biggest events, I suppose, companies to a certain extent. They have a huge section of their business that focuses on events, global events, which are largely face-to-face things where they'd have breakout sessions and main speakers and so on. And they did an event, a global boardroom, was it last week or the week before? And they had a huge number of speakers. Tony Blair was one, Al Gore was one, and it ran over 3 days, was free to register. And that is that the future of it? Would you choose to go to a conference online if it meant that you could do it from the comfort of your home? It would be a reduction in travel from that environmental and cost perspective. Or are you dying to get back on a plane and have that face-to-face? How will that manifest?
Yeah. Or can you get back on a plane, I think is the key point. And then obviously work-life balance. Well, I'm very cognizant of people working from home, particularly with 2-income families, and maybe one of them is realizing that, it's not worth going back to work because of the time, number one, they're getting to spend with their family, but also the money that they're saving by being at home from travel and transport and lunches. So it is something to bear in mind that this will have an impact on our workforce long term, I think, and we all have to be.
I think as a business owner, to be sensitive to that. Your employees are now accustomed to having more time for exercise and, cooking at home and spending more time with their kids, albeit positives and negatives to that. But when you get back to working, as normal as possible, are you going to allow people a little bit more flexibility, or does that not fit in with your business structure? And how are you going to address that? Will it be a struggle for people? So I think that's the purpose of this slide, is really just conversational. It's just, these are what we think are going to be the key things going forward. And
I guess the big takeaway is that if you haven't engaged a good online marketing strategy, now is the time to do it, because you are going to need it now and into the future more than ever.
Yeah. So I think that's us. Sorry for going over a little bit.
Alan McGovern, Laura Nolan, izest Marketing. That was, I suppose, going over was justified because very relevant content. A lot of valuable insights, and look, I suppose it's important to hear that there's still time to adopt a digital marketing strategy, and businesses haven't missed the boat. A number of questions have come in, so what we'll do, if I can ask you just to remain online in the background, and after we hear from Owen Laverty, we'll just we'll tackle those questions. So thank you both again. Owen Laverty, I am delighted to welcome you to the webinar today. Owen Laverty is the Head of Enterprise and Economic Development, Dunleary Rapdown. Owen, you're very welcome this morning.
Thank you, Connor. And I'm just looking at that photograph now, and I wish I'd actually got my hair cut before getting the toilet rolls. Welcome. Delighted to be here and to just share some insight into how we're supporting companies getting online.
That's I suppose it's very topical again, Owen, and it ties in very well with the guys from izest. well aware of what the local enterprise office offer, you know, on what you offer. I've attended many events over the years. Just some really, really great supports, everything from mentoring to lift, lean, financial supports, you know, developing business plans. You know, it's, you know, it really caters for, you know, the SME and possibly larger companies as well. I think today we'll probably focus more on the trading online voucher, and you'll probably you know, mention some of the other supports that are available. I think with all the supports that the local enterprise office offer, that in itself, I think justifies a second or a separate webinar, just to get really stuck into those. But we'd be delighted to hear Owen today. Just give us an overview of what supports are available, and just more specifically around the trading online voucher.
No, absolutely, and thanks a million, Conor. Listen, I just put up a link there to all the government supports. You see it in the chat there for people that it's just been updated this morning, so I think it's a very useful document. But I'll focus on the trading online voucher. So this time last year, only about 60% of Irish businesses had an online presence. And the trading online voucher was designed to try and increase that number. And of course, with COVID, for all the reasons, you know, that Alan and Laura were mentioning, and it was a great presentation. I learned a lot from it. So thank you guys. You know, we're seeing a massive increase in the uptake on that. And so the government has actually recognized that the old online trading voucher was basically they would give you 50% funding towards a €5,000 spend. But because of the crisis, and a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, I guess, and it has participated huge changes in the support structures and what's being offered generally by the government agencies. So they have changed the voucher to be more user-friendly, and so they are now 90% funded up to €2,500. So the good news is now that you can actually get two vouchers. So in essence, it's a 90% grant towards a spend of €5,000 to either get your site, get you an online presence, or to improve your online presence. Now it is competitive. The government is looking at increasing the allocation. It's from the Department of Communication, and there's a lot of engagement at the moment to improve the amount of money available. But at the moment, we are training this week. The Lira Down hosted over 1,500 people onto a digital workshop. So one of the criteria is that you need to get 3 quotes. If you apply you get sent a link to a training seminar, and the training seminar has lots of good common sense advice for people who haven't considered getting online, and how to go about engaging with a potential supplier, etc., and how to basically ensure that the maximum chance for your application. So there's 3 of those a week at least being run nationally, and so it's very easy. You'll see a date for the next one, which is actually on tomorrow, but there will be lots more coming up, so there's no big rush. One of the things I would say is, because of the massive increase in volume, there is a bit of a delay in processing all the vouchers, but please don't let that be inhibit coming into the process. So if I can get the next slide, please. So what can the voucher be used for? Essentially, you know, there are some people who want to create their own websites and have the capability to do that, so they can use Wix or you know, potentially, you know, any of the other services that are out there, and they may want to get some photography or you know, get some additional work done. So it's not exactly, they're not just looking to get a website developer, but it's more that the content for that, so it can actually support that to a point. You can also add, if you want to add payment facilities or booking systems to your website, if you want to have subscriptions to retail platform solutions, etc. If there's some consultation around the back end and making the user experience work even better than it does, Or if you want to, I guess ultimately, you know, if you can give me the next slide, please, there, Sarah. It can be used for anything really that is going to support you getting online and trading online. If you need to get that will include software. It also includes advertising. So if you want to purchase online advertising, but it's only to a value of 30% of the total cost. So it's 30% of the €2,500. Obviously, a big play is the app space now, and that is seen as a fundable piece in this. And even if you want to develop a digital marketing strategy, because some people, you know, I guess it's wise, like anything else, you need to plan for success and you need to scope out your digital strategy, understand what markets you're trying to get into, you know, how best to do that, and, you know, bring in best examples and best case exemplars into your plan. So if you want to hire somebody to do that, we can support that as well, and even implementing that digital marketing strategy. So really, you can see it also includes training skills. So there may be some elements that, you know, your staff that need to be trained up to work in that online space, and it can also be used for that as well. So it's actually quite broad. If I can get the next slide, please. So how do you apply? If you go to the localenterprise.ie/DLR, each of the local enterprise offices has its own end truncation. So we are in DLR. If you go to localenterprise.ie, and you can find all the other local enterprise offices around the country. When you go onto that website, you will see we have a series of events. If I can get the next slide, please. So on the first page, if you scroll down, you'll see all the upcoming events. And so you'll be able to find when we're actually doing our next online trading voucher seminar. I would, if you can't get on one, if it's full, there shouldn't be any trouble getting on to a subsequent one. Like I said, they're happening on a very regular basis. If I can give it the next slide, please. Sorry about the bleeping in the background. So I would encourage everybody to just go onto the site and actually just maybe have a look at our general content while you're there. If I can get the next slide. Oh, I'm missing a slide here. Okay, sorry. Just for general support, Sarah, sorry, if you can just go to the next slide, please. Sorry, I skipped over that one. Just in terms of general supports, you can see a huge amount of supports that are available, and that's been constantly updated for anyone who is interested. And we'd be delighted to see you come on. So we've actually, because there's so much activity at the moment, and so many supports coming out and so much advice coming on stream, we've actually collated it all in the one place. So that if you go to our website, you'll actually see a COVID link, and it'll bring you onto that to that page. If I can get the next page there, please, Sarah. And these are our general supports for people who are interested in the other offerings of the LEO. So you can see where we'll actually support the creation of jobs, and we're still open for business. And these jobs, we can support jobs where there is an exportable service or a manufacturing company. And so they're the kind of criteria and how we can support businesses generally. So I won't take up any more of your time. The link is, you should have the link to the website at the end of this seminar. So we'd love to see you visit, and please do apply for the voucher. I think it's, like everyone was saying, it's so important to be online now. And I don't see that people's purchasing behavior changing anytime soon. And there's some great examples of people who've made a fantastic success and pivoted, and hopefully we'll enable you to do that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Owen Laverty. It's great to see so many supports available for businesses in Sandyford Business District. I think the trading online voucher is is one of the key supports, and it will certainly help businesses develop, their online presence. If I can ask Alan McGovern and Laura Nolan to come back in from izest Marketing, just a couple of questions. This one is for you, Owen. We've had two queries in relation to this. Does the company or a company, do they have to sell a product online? So we have some professional services companies, say Morgan has an small accounting practice in Sandyford, and there's also a commercial and residential cleaning company. They don't currently take payments online. Are they excluded?
No, they're not.
No,
this is for anybody and everybody. You have to be trading for 6 months.
Okay. So obviously, if you're a new business, you are excluded from that support, but there's many other supports available from the local enterprise office if you're a new business. One for you, Alan or Laura. A company here, they don't have an online presence, and they want an online presence, but they've no idea where to start. Any tips or advice?
Well, do you want to take that one?
I would say that I suppose the best advice we can give that company is to give us a call. So it's obviously a no obligation call, but the best way to deal with that is if they get in touch with me directly, say as commercial director, and we can just talk through it with them, what their business model is, how they can take the first steps based on their budget and what their objectives are, and whether it's us that works with them or help them prepare a kind of a plan for getting multiple quotes. But we'd be happy to have a conversation with them. But ultimately what you have to do is look at your brand, your target audience, how best to communicate with them, and what platforms will support that, and what budget you have then to support that, to support your online presence.
And just to reassure that person as well, Connor, it's never a bad time to start. It's always a good time to start. So, even though they've nothing right now, it's a great time to start, and they could get traction really quickly if they do it correctly.
Okay. Another one for you, Owen. You said it's a very competitive process at the moment, just due to volumes. Someone's asking, where do most applications fail? Is there one particular area that people fall down?
So they are scored because it is competitive, but I mean the department is looking at increasing that allotment, so hopefully that won't be so much of a challenge. I guess what we like to see is businesses that are sustainable, that have a decent turnover, and they're the ones that have the most likely chance of getting ahead, of being successful in this application process. But I wouldn't, I strongly believe this funding is going to open up. We're actually going to get more funding from the department. So please don't let that stop you applying if your turnover isn't, I mean, when I say to give you an indicator of turnover, like if you have a turnover of 40, 50K, we see that as a kind of being a viable business, and so I guess it just depends on who else comes into the mix, But there is also, obviously, if the company can afford it themselves and we figure that they actually don't need the voucher, then we take that into consideration as well.
Okay, well, thanks, Owen. Sort of similar question to Alan or Laura. Just in terms of online sales, one company traditionally wasn't in the online space. Because of the pandemic, they have gone into that space. They've been forced to do it. They've struggled and stumbled their way along, but it's not gaining any traction. I would assume that's probably down to maybe analysing their customers, current customers or potential customers, or maybe down to advertising.
Yeah, I guess like that brings up a good point. Like building a website is only the very first step, or communicating in some digital fashion is really only the first step. And it goes back to just trying to join the dots between every element of digital marketing, be it social media, email marketing, online advertising and researching, and it very much depends what type of field they're in, but researching what competitors are doing online and how consumers are engaging online. And we, any digital marketing company and will have tools to analyze how any given market is, how people are engaging with any given product or service online. So research at the very start is really important. That's why we try and avoid, doing, just straight up website projects, because there's so much more involved in it and it needs a particular focus. So I guess, again, if they want some, no obligation advice, just to get in contact with Laura and we'll happily talk them through it.
Yeah, because one of the things we talked about was, people will be a lot of people might have rushed to get an e-commerce presence. And you'll know yourselves from your own online shopping experiences, it's not enough to be able to buy the product online. It's the product that you can buy the easiest. So that user experience and the customer, or the communication, is vitally important. So yeah, we're happy to talk through that with anybody.
Okay, that's great. I just need to obviously point out, because we represent the entire district, there are other marketing companies as well within Sandyford Business District, and they're on our business directory. We've run over in time, so I'd like to sincerely thank Alan McGovern and Laura Nolan from izest Marketing, and Owen Laverty, head of Leo. Yeah, your input this morning has been invaluable, and I've no doubt it will help many businesses in Sandyford Business District. The webinar itself and the content of the webinar will be available on our website, sandyford.ie, and all the contact details for izest Marketing and the local enterprise office. So thank you for your time today. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Take care, stay safe, and respect the 2 meters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.